welcome to the vlog, and as you can see we are not on Narrowboat Jubilee, we're still at home in lockdown. However, we've just received some exciting news, and in a few days we will be allowed back for overnight stays on the boat. So we are now getting ready for our epic narrowboat adventure, and this time we were heading north towards Leek in Staffordshire, but more of that in a later vlog. Now, some of you might remember that in the last vlog I was in a sorry state, having broken my wrist. Well, I'm pleased to say that the wrist is healing well, and lots of physio and Joe Wick's workout every day. Thank you, Joe. And I'm almost back to full strength and full movement. And I'm very grateful to the medical staff at Coventry Hospital for sorting me out. They were all absolutely fabulous. Later in this vlog we'll be introducing some new features that we will be recording this year, but first Carl had to fix the inverter that was playing up, so let's see how he got on.
Today we're going to look at the inverter. The inverter, as everybody knows I'm sure, is the thing that takes the 12 volt DC power and creates the 240 volt AC power that many other things on the boat need, and ours has been very intermittent. It'll run for a bit, it'll cut out, it looks like it's overheating, and then sometimes it just cuts out, so it's been very problematic. So I'm just going to show you where our inverter is on the boat. So there it is, our Pesky inverter, and it consists of a number of different connections. Right down at this end here, this is the connection for the AC, and that's just a plug that plugs in, normal 3-pin plug, and that particular plug goes up to an isolator, so that when it's unplugged, there's no AC current going in from the shoreline. And it's really important that you understand that, because if there is no isolator, then when it's plugged into shore sides, these pins here will be live, and it'll be extremely dangerous indeed. Down at the other end of the unit is 3 connections. There are these 2 heavy duty connections. These come in from the batteries, and this is the power that powers this particular unit. And then this green connection at the top is very important. This is the bonding connection. And it controls how the unit is bonded. Now, you have to be really careful with power and water, like in a marine environment. If you don't get the bonding right, you can find that the hull starts to pit with the electrolytic action of the currents flowing through the boat. And how they react with the water environment that the boat sits in. So there we go, the old unit's out. Its connections down here with just a couple of Allen screws that screwed through to the terminals on the cable, and then above here is the new unit we've gone for. We've gone from a unit from Sterling Power Products. So the reason I've gone for Sterling is that they're kind of a mid-range brand. They're not as expensive as Victron or Master Volt, and while those units do have some awesome functionality in them, some of that functionality really is not functionality I'm going to use. I don't need to plug it all into Wi-Fi. Fundamentally, what I need is a unit that's quite straightforward, quite reliable. The other end of the spectrum, you will find a lot of inverters for trucks and the like. Some of those are pretty good. Some of those are pretty on the cheap side. So I generally go for Sterling products. They're kind of middle of the range. They're good quality, they're well built. I've used them a lot on the yachts I've had, and I found them to be very reliable. This unit is slightly bigger than the one that's come off. Let me show you that. It's only really an inch or 2 bigger, What I'm hoping is that will allow it to dissipate heat a little bit better. And there's a couple of things about that which I think are quite significant. First of all, if you have a look at the end of the Stirling unit, you'll see two fans. The Wico unit only actually has a single fan on that. So that, I think, is probably part of our overheating problem. So I'm hoping that with the increased ventilation and the fans, the unit will stay a little bit cooler. The connections are pretty identical, so the connections on the Stirling product, if I show you those, they just clip off. There's a stud on there, screws on there, just this very similar idea. On the Wico unit it was an Allen bolt that went through. On this unit it's an actual nut and bolt type of arrangement. Similar thing, the bonding connection is down there. I don't know if you can see that little wing nut down there. That's where the bonding connection is. And if we go to the other end of the unit, you'll see that you've got the power plug on there, the 3-pin socket, very similar to the other unit, and you've got the on-off switch down that end. You also, both units I think have the ability to plug in a remote control. I haven't bought that yet. Don't know if I'm going to really need it since the unit's quite accessible, but if I find it's a bit of a pain to get in there, I'll buy that and plug that in later. Almost all of Stirling power products use a remote control that uses a network style connector, an RJ54 connector. It means that the cables for the remote control are very easy to install. They're quite small in their physical size. So let's get the unit actually mounted in the cupboard now. Okay, so here we are. I've screwed the unit in against the wall with 4 screws. I've plugged in the mains cable. I've turned the unit on at the end. I've connected the bonding cable down this end and the 2 DC cables, the positive and the negative. I don't know if you can see that. I've got a couple of things to do to finish the installation off. One is that these caps here, I don't know if you can see this very clearly in the tight space, are supposed to clip on there. But actually, if you look at the size of the cabling clips and the angles, there's no way that lot is going to go together in a sensible type of a way. So I'm going to go to the Chandler's and see if I can get some rubber insulating boots for these. There's certainly no way I'd want to leave this in a cupboard without any insulation over those terminals, because it's too easy for something to arc across those and cause a problem. The other thing that I need to do still is to refix this piece of conduit. I had to clip it off when I was installing the new unit. So what I need to do is I need to go and buy some broad cable ties, screw them to this back panel here, and then clip the cable to it. It's important when you're doing these type of installations to tidy up the cabling. It's very easy when something gets put in here to get hooked up, to pull a cable and to disconnect something that you don't want to. It's not really the disconnection that's the problem, it's the arcing and the sort of the hazard that it can cause during that process. So I hope you found that interesting. It's quite a simple little job to do. Only took me a few minutes really. The next thing to do is to take it out in the cut and see how it performs, and I'll keep you updated in further vlogs. Right, well I hope you found that useful, and you might wonder why I'm sitting by this barbecue. Well, we hope to be sharing some of our favourite barbecue recipes in a feature we're going to call Towpath Tucker. Let's see how we get on with that as the year progresses. In our next vlog we're going to be heading off on our 2020 epic narrowboat adventure, and we'll be visiting some new places hopefully and catching up with some old friends. So until then, thank you for watching. If you've enjoyed this video, please click the like button and subscribe to our channel. Bye!